it's Amy with Finding Balance, the YouTube channel where we are exploring how on earth I'm trying to find balance as I go from 1 to 2 kids, manage my mental health, my garden, and possibly our family's move to Sweden. If any of that sounds interesting to you, please do stick around, like and subscribe, and we'll get on with today's topic, which is social changes that happen postpartum. So this is our matrescence series. We're kind of exploring all the different changes that you go through a period of what's known as matrescence, like adolescence, but for mums, and just as awkward and difficult. I'll leave that with you there. And so I think I was reflecting on this, and I have to admit I'm actually really jealous. I feel like some families are just so close that when a child comes into the picture, there's just no question about whether the grandparents, aunts and uncles are able to lend a hand. They're just with each other, and they're close enough both physically and emotionally that it's easy enough to just arrange even at short notice. Now, I have some parts of my family that are emotionally close, but physically quite far away. And I have other bits of my family that are maybe less emotionally close, even though they are relatively nearby as things go. And I think it brings up some interesting questions. So, for example, the family that I'm maybe closer to are all up north, and they're all together. And so I see a bit what I'm missing out on. So my sister, for example, has 3 kids, and she also has my mum and my stepdad round the corner, and I don't. And I see what she gets. She gets a little bit of respite here and there, but she also has an emergency contact. If something happens, my mum and my stepdad can pop and pick up her kids from school or nursery. Like, it's not a big deal, and they can support her if she's struggling at all with anything. And I love that for her. You know, it's not like saying she shouldn't have that and I should, but I am a little bit like, oh, that would be nice to have. And we have actually considered, if we didn't move to Sweden, maybe moving a bit closer to some family. Obviously it depends on what happens with Tim's side of his family and what they decide to do. You know, if obviously Sweden doesn't work out for us. But yeah, that's kind of something I can see that I'm really missing out on. And when I've talked with other mums at the walking groups and stuff, actually they've talked about, yeah, I'm a little bit jealous of people who have like their parents around the corner, and not even just their parents around the corner. Some people do have their parents around the corner, and that's a problem, right? Because they're not emotionally close to be able to kind of rely on some of that stuff. And certainly, like, some of my family are like relatively close, but not emotionally close. And I'm like, yeah, I'm sure that they would be able to take care of my kids, but because we're not emotionally close, there's almost this little bit of like, yes, maybe. And it's definitely more of a maybe than a yes, please look after the kids so that I can get a bit of respite. And then we've got like my partner's family, who are like really, really close, but they're also what I call international. They're very international. My partner grew up in and around Europe, kind of France, Italy, Finland, and his sisters now, one of them lives in Australia, the other's in Hong Kong, his mum's in Belgium. It's lovely for holidays. It's awful for emergency contacts. And so, as much as they love to see the boys and they offer to babysit when they're around, all of that takes lots of planning in advance. If one thing goes wrong, we might not get another chance to have a babysitter for months. And I know that I could pay someone, but there's always the concern about like strangers around your pre-verbal children. And it costs money that you might not have because you're on maternity leave and you're on the unpaid portion of it now. Oh well. I will admit, we are lucky. This evening we've been gifted a night of babysitting, so that we can go out for my partner's birthday present, which is tickets to see Daddy Freya. and we're going to see them in concert. But the babysitter, which is my sister-in-law, has basically squeezed us in during the 6 short weeks that she's in Europe from Australia. And it's so appreciated, but it's also so precarious. And yeah, I think that's some of the thing that's like really difficult for me in terms of trying to manage, you know, that balance that you need as a new mum. There's a phrase that it takes a village to raise a child, and for so much of human history, we've just done that together in groups, and I think it's really not natural to have such an isolated family unit. I think we're really seeing the effect of it in new mums and their mental health and the toll that it's taking. Just feeling really touched out is kind of a natural response to having to do everything and be everything to everyone. I think actually in reality, if we were living in that kind of village, you would have little pockets of respite. I'm not talking like hours and hours, but like 20 minutes to go and have a shower while your neighbour watches the kids, you know, while they're popping over for a cup of tea. And it's funny because I actually remember, and I feel so guilty about this because I'm seeing it from the other side, but back when I was a therapist, and I would say to new mums, you know, you can't pour from an empty cup. And that is true. It's still true. You can't pour from an empty cup. But I didn't have the perspective I have now, which is that it's pretty darn hard to fill your cup when you don't have support, when you don't have that village. So that's kind of what I would say about like kind of the family network. I think also there are some other social changes that happen when you have kids. Interestingly, my place in both my family and my partner's family has changed. I feel a bit more like cemented by that joint biology of our kids. I mean, obviously we were family when me and my partner got married, but it didn't feel as permanent until we had kids. So if you're not married and you've got kids, that is a bigger commitment in my mind to each other. And I think also it changed how they saw me and my role within the family, and that kind of changed. So for example, like with my husband's family, I'm now the first port of call for questions about the kids, which I don't think I was really the first to hear about anything before. It all sort of went through my husband, which is quite natural because obviously, you know, he's the son, he's the brother, so kind of makes sense that they would go to him first. But yeah, I think now when it's questions about kids, it's me first, which is interesting. It's a bit of a shift. So yeah, I think also as well, one of the things that's been quite hard to admit is that I'm grieving. I'm grieving the loss of some friendships where I've been the first of my group to have children, and I found out actually that some of that group don't want to have children. They don't like kids, which is fair enough, each to their own. But also, you know, I think what it's meant is we don't relate as much. Most of what I'm thinking about and experiencing is about becoming a mum. And in one case, I actually lost a friend because we were just in really different places in our lives, and they wanted what I had. They wanted the family and they wanted the kids and they wanted that unit, but they weren't in a place where they could get that yet. And I think that was actually really, really hard on them to see me with a family. And, you know, even just the times you're available, like if they're working 9 to 5 and you're on maternity leave, and by the evening and weekend you're just exhausted and you're relying on your partner to take over and you're just like, oh, okay, great, I can rest. Then the times that you're available to be with your friends maybe will have changed a bit. It takes a lot more planning, I think, as an adult and as an adult with kids. And I think it's hard to admit that you're grieving because people think that, like, if you've got kids, it's so joyful that you shouldn't be grieving what you've lost. But I'm here to tell you 2 things can be true. you can absolutely love your new family life and still grieve your old life and your old friends. So, we've talked a lot about the different kind of components of the village that helps you raise a child, that helps give you respite, that helps fill your cup. So what are some ways that I am trying to find balance and trying to build a village for myself? So, firstly, it's connecting with other mums, people who are in the same stage of life as you and who have some of the similar experiences, like, you know, being pooped on. Most adults don't have that experience unless they have kids. We actually went, before we had our first child, we went to an NCT group, and we still got friends from that. We've got a couple of friends. Now, obviously, who you get in your group, whether you're going to be a fit for each other, that's sort of a bit hit and miss, I will say. But you might find one or two people who you do connect with and who you do like. So we did do NCT, and actually one of the interesting things is we've now got a couple around the corner from us. They've got a child the same age as our eldest, and they're just such great neighbours. Like, they were the ones that watered my garden while we were away, and it was really lovely of them to do that. So yeah, I've also gone to things like the Mum Club. I don't know if that's in your area, but there is kind of all over the UK, local ones, and they do kind of brunches and things where you get childcare and you get to be child free, but with your child in the room. You get to really enjoy yourself. I really love that. And then also Fit Mummy. And what I would say with all of these kind of groups is they're a jumping off point, and they've allowed me to connect with mums who live nearby and to kind of go on some walks and commiserate together outside of the group. Then there's groups for your children. So, for example, like Baby College, my eldest actually met his best friend there, and now they go to the same nursery, and that's really cool. We also do story, song and rhyme at our local library. So again, that's another way to kind of meet really local parents, because things like the Mum Club, it might not be very local people. And then also something that's been really nice recently is just connecting or reconnecting with family and friends who do have babies around the same time. That's been really lovely, because I feel like I actually regained a couple of friends who I've known for years, and now we're just in that same stage of life again. So I've got a friend up north who's also friends with my sister, who had a little boy at the same time as my eldest, and I had a friend, old work friend, who've been really good friends with. They've just had their first child, and so we're kind of in that same stage of life again, which is really lovely. I'm also palming off all of my stuff to her. I'm like, hey, you have a little boy, do you want this stuff? It's just enough of an age gap that I can palm it off. So that's been really helpful for me, and I hope for them. I hope I'm not being annoying by giving them all my stuff. The other thing that I've done is I went back to church. I grew up as a Christian, and I was a Christian for a really long time. My partner isn't, and I don't know if that's where this kind of came from, but when we moved to where we are now, it was during COVID, I'm not going to lie. All the churches felt a bit weird. Every time we went, it just felt a bit weird. And so we never really settled anywhere. But me and my husband both like church, even though he's not a believer. He likes church for the community, and I think we were both really craving that weekly rhythm that church can give you. And I remember, we were talking about this kind of idea of feeling a bit touched out, of like not being able to have any respite, being the only one responsible. We went to this church, we've settled there now, and the third week we went, we'd met a lady on the first week, and the third week we were there, my eldest was kicking off, running all over the place, and my youngest was also just really unsettled. I was trying to settle him, and she just said, "Can I help?" And she, put her arms out to like take the baby. So she took my youngest and I ran after my eldest and got him, settled with a snack. Like, this is how we do church here. And then my youngest just fell asleep in her arms, and it was just so nice to feel like the burden wasn't all on me. And yeah, I think if you can, if church is something that you can do church. They usually have mum and baby groups as well, like stay and play things as well. A lot of church do a lot of community stuff as well during the week, so would very much recommend things like that. I also find walking groups really useful. Mum and baby walking groups. I think some things are just easier to talk about when you're side by side walking than like over the phone, or even just like over a coffee. So yeah, it's interesting though, because I've done all this work to try and build up this little community, but at the same time we've still got a bit of a question mark over everything, because we're going to Sweden to see if we can make it work out there. I think I'll probably try and do exactly what I've done here, which is connect with friends who just had a baby out there, try and go to some mum and baby groups. Hopefully I will be speaking enough Swedish by then that I can get by, and then also find a church, so we'll see. Yeah, that's me, that's the social changes, that's how I'm trying to find balance with the social aspect of life now. But it's been lovely talking to you. I hope you found today helpful, and I'll see you next time. Hey there.